Well, that's this video demonetized. Hello everyone, bringing you a video today talking about this. Now this is prompted by me posting a photograph holding this recently in the wake of Ian, my friend Ian, very kindly gifting me some items of US Vietnam War uniform, the tropical combat uniform, boots, helmet cover and so forth. I had the M1956 gear already, so I wanted to put everything together and get some photographs, and this was the closest thing to an M16 I had in my collection. I hid the lack of a forward assist by holding it like that. Much as you do see M16s in army use even in the latter days of the Vietnam War without the forward assist, it is a bit of a rarity by that point, so certainly not standard. Basically I wanted to go over, because people said in response to those photographs, nice M16 you've got there and so on. I wanted to go over and just detail exactly what this is, its failings, and what it actually is supposed to represent and why I have it. It's supposed to represent an AR-15, as the British Army termed them when first introduced into British Army service, in use in the 1960s in Borneo, with British Army troops fighting in the jungle there. It was recognised as an excellent weapon for the jungle. It's relatively lightweight, high firepower. This was purchased to represent one of those rifles. From photographs I've been able to locate that show enough detail, I believe certainly the earliest issue of these were actually Colt Model 602s. Now, the development of what would become the M16 in US service, Air Force and Army specifications respectively, it's an interesting story. There's plenty of information available online, which I would suggest searching out and reading up. The 602 is essentially the second development model, the second production model, which improved various features which were found on the 601. It had an improved flash hider, for example, change to the foresight and so forth. Various detail differences from the 601. It didn't have features which would appear later, like a fence on the side of the receiver. It has a plain flat-sided receiver. And this weapon here I have essentially replicates these early features. So slab-sided receiver, early flash hider, no forward assist. But what it actually is a Jager, an Armi Jager 2.2 lookalike, and that is readily apparent on a relatively close inspection. There are also detail differences which give it away at longer range, but for my purposes it was a good stand-in, or is a good stand-in, until I can come up with something better. I may well pick up a more detailed airsoft example. I believe 602s are now actually reproduced as airsoft weapons. Now, the British Army would not only use the 602, they would also use the equivalent of the 604, which is the 604, which is the equivalent of the US Air Force specification M16, which introduced things like the fence on the side of the receiver here and so forth. And they would also latterly use the M16A1, and then later on the M16A2 and so forth, throughout the Royal Marines as well, of course. In Borneo, it wasn't just the Army, it was the Royal Marines, and that would continue on. The Royal Marines have been seen using the M16 quite extensively as well. So, as I say, it's something where the British Army has used many different marks of the M16 family, the AR-15 family, but during different periods. You see the 604 turn up in Northern Ireland because you can clearly see the fence on the side of the receiver, although you still see these in service. These were in service a long time as well. Obviously, once they've been bought, they were kept in stock and used whenever they were needed. And then latterly, as I say, the M16A1 would turn up and is seen used in the Falklands by the SAS and so forth. And then later on, the 16A2 turns up in use in Iraq and various other places with various British forces alongside our own indigenous weapons. But as I say, the reason I purchased this was it is not a bad stand-in for a Colt Model 602 in terms of the various details which are shown. Obviously, if I open the dust cover there, you can see immediately we have a half-width ejection port for the 2.2 ammunition, which immediately gives us away, so I always keep the dust cover closed when I'm at events. But otherwise, it's not a bad stand-in, or certainly not for the price I paid for it. The idea of getting an actual deactivated example of one of these early AR-15 examples would be ludicrous. Whether they're even available, I don't know. And I believe at the time I purchased this, it was not easy to get hold of early replica replicas of early AR-15 models in airsoft form or otherwise. Bought it off my friend Alan. I believe he now has an airsoft example, and I'm probably going to upgrade to a more detailed, more accurate airsoft example at some point in the future. But for my purposes, it's really not a bad stand-in, as it is for a British issue AR-15 from the time period, the middle 1960s, which was when these were used in Borneo, which is quite an interesting story in itself. They were issued out to, as I've already said, the Army and the Royal Marines both used them quite extensively, alongside the SLR and the Sterling submachine gun. And they were used for various reasons. One is that, as already stated, they're ideal for jungle warfare. They're lightweight, high firepower, and they would go on to be used in jungle training as well after this time period, quite commonly seen in the 70s and 80s with jungle warfare training. And in Borneo specifically, in the 1960s, there was an element of deniability. They used 5.56 ammunition, which at the time was not a standard British Army caliber. So cartridge cases found lying around on the wrong side of the Indonesian border, there was some deniability there of, well, we don't use that sort of ammunition. So it gave an element of that as well for cross-border operations. Used by the SAS very extensively, used by the Royal Marines, used by the regular Army as well. Not only used by more elite forces, but actually used by the regular British Army as well, out in the jungle at that time period. As I say, alongside the standard issue weapons. Quite an interesting piece of the history of this weapon. And certainly an interesting period of history for the British Army itself as well. The 1960s is one of my favourite decades of the Cold War from that point of view. The jungle warfare that was going on at the time is very interesting, and there's lots else going on worldwide, which is very interesting. That's something else that was asked to me the other day, was what's your favourite decade, or favourites perhaps an odd word, the most interesting decade in your opinion of the Cold War. And I think the 60s would be mine, or the one I find most interesting anyway. That's perhaps a topic for a future video. We've done everything here I think we've covered everything here I wanted to cover in this video, just to explain exactly what this rifle is, from the photographs, obviously to clarify exactly what this rifle is, and just to talk about it a little bit. And that's everything I wanted to cover in this video. As I always say, there is of course a Patreon page if you'd like to support the channel. There's a link to that in the description. There's also a PayPal link if you want to make a one-time donation, and thank you very much to those of you who've done that. It's really appreciated. There's also a Facebook and an Instagram page where you can check out what's going on with the channel. There's updates on there, there's photographs posted and so forth. They've been a little quiet recently because I'm back at university now, so time is not as plentiful as it was, but nevertheless, they're a good place to keep up with what's going on. And of course, you can subscribe to the channel, which is always greatly appreciated. The channel's doing quite well at the moment, and it's always great to see new subscribers. It sort of gives me hope that I'm producing videos which are of interest to people. So that's everything for this video. So until next time, bye for now.